One of the main rules in a Nuzlocke is that you typically only catch the first encounter per route. This is mainly to encourage yourself to use Pokemon that you would usually never use. But after playing through as many Nuzlockes as I have, I found that I actually end up getting a lot of the same mons, which is why I play Nuzlockes with weird rules and limitations now. And that's mainly because of how encounters work. Not all encounters are built equal. Quite often there'll be a Pokemon that will have a very low chance of spawning, and since you're only targeting the first one you land, while you may get 1 or 2 rare encounters per run, a likely scenario is that you'll almost never land some encounters and will miss out on a bunch of weird team combinations unless you add other rules. So I thought, how well would a run go if I only used rare encounters? I mean, they're rare, so surely they should be good, right? Well, maybe if I wasn't playing this in the Johto game. You already know the rules of a hardcore Nuzlocke, but to summarize, if a Pokemon faints, it's no longer usable, we can't use items in battle, we can't overlevel past the next gym, and we'll be playing on set mode. The only other rule I'll be adding is that I can only use rare encounters. But what actually defines a rare encounter? For a Pokemon to be valid, I decided on 3 criterias. Each time I enter a route, I'll look up the encounter table, and from there, I'll pick the rarest encounter. This Pokemon must have an encounter rate of 5% or lower, and I'll be checking other routes it can spawn on to make sure it never exceeds 5%, otherwise it's just a rare encounter on that route. It's not necessarily a rare encounter. If there's a tie, I'll just flip a coin and I'll keep going up the encounter table until the Pokemon is valid. If no Pokemon are valid on a route, then I'll just lose the encounter for that route. I'll also be looking at the entire line. Just because a Pidgeotto has a 5% chance on one route, doesn't mean it's rare, as you can find Pidgey everywhere. See, even I can play with rules that are nice and simple. Let's just hope that the run is too. The first thing that we need to do is pick our starter. Well, while lore-wise, they are very rare Pokemon in the region, mechanically, everyone gets a starter so they don't fit the criteria. I decided to pick Cyndaquil as the Totodile line is typically harder to deal with in the remakes. Funnily enough, Rattata on the first route is actually only a 5% chance when it's not night. Of course, you can find Rattata everywhere, so it won't count. Unfortunately, they also removed the Jigglypuff encounter up north in the remakes, which would have been illegible otherwise, meaning our first true encounter and starter, much to my delight, is the Dunsparce. Honestly, I'm convinced that I subconsciously chose this game so I could use him. This is a 1% chance in Dark Cave, and it took me so long to find. Now, if you want to be technical, you can find Dunsparce after using Rock Smash in Dark Cave with the 90% rate. But I needed to have some limitations as to what I should qualify for encounters, otherwise we'll literally have no Pokemon for the first gym. Which, as I'm sure you could tell, means our only Pokemon for Falconer is Dunderdun. And my lord, Dunderdun is absolutely useless this early on. With our level cap of 13, he learns 4 moves. Only one of these 4 moves actually deals damage, that being Rage, the worst attacking move in Pokemon. All Rage does is increase your attack by 1 stage if you get attacked and it was the last move that you used. Doesn't sound all that bad, until you realize it has a base power of 20, and when it's your only move, you need to use it 3 times before it's even as effective as using Tackle. And remember, we have to actually take damage for that to take place. Somehow we outspeed using Rage, and Pidgey goes for a Tackle, increasing our attack. One more and Pidgeotto comes out. Now all we need to do is spam Rage, but unfortunately it's faster and Roost heals more damage than we do. I use the Glare to paralyze, so now all we need is 1 free turn. Pidgeotto does not get paralyzed a single turn, but it finally decides to use a different move, so another Rage gets us the first badge. And we're actually not getting a new encounter for the next gym either. Zubat's a 5% chance on Route 32, but obviously you can find it in most caves at a higher rate. And in Union Cave, Onyx is a 5% chance, but you can find it on the lower floor at 10%. So yup, onto Bugsy with only our trusty partner Dunderdun. Thankfully it learns Rollout at level 17, which is also the level cap. Scyther spends the first turn using Leer to lower our defense, and we go straight for the Rollout, which crits. We didn't need it, but sure, why not? Onto Metapod. Doesn't quite get the kill turn 1, but then gets another crit. That was a bit overkill. Finally it's Kakuna, and we hit our 4th rollout, which also crits. Oh god, Dunderdun takes no prisoners. Why are my Pokemon always so violent? I sure hope I haven't used up all my luck this early into the run. Oh look, it's a rival battle. I'm sure what I just said wasn't foreshadowing in the slightest. So unfortunately, Dunderdun, our only Pokemon, is a normal type. Ghastly is a ghost type that only has 1 attacking move, Lick, which we're immune to. Would have been great for us if it wasn't for the fact that it only makes it more likely to use the move Curse, a move which cuts its HP by half and puts a curse on us, reducing our HP by 1/4 every turn. You can get rid of this easily by switching out, but our team's a little empty at the moment, essentially putting this battle on the timer. We of course have no way of beating this battle within 4 turns, so that's 1 run already down. Ghastly using Curse should be a 1 in 3 chance, but we keep getting hit by turn 1. I tried using Yawn to put it to sleep, but we need 2 turns to pull that off. I figured using Glare would be better instead so we can outspeed and even have a 1 in 4 chance for a free turn. It uses Curse turn 1 again. It wasn't until my 5th attempt when he finally used Spite, a move that's not Curse, and then Mean Look, another move that's not Curse. 2 rollouts take care of Ghastly, and thankfully with our bulk, a few more rollouts and rages is all we need to end the battle. That should have not taken me nearly that many attempts. Ghastly uses random moves, and with Paralysis, the chances of it not using Curse is a little over half. Kinda early to begin relying on luck, but we really have nothing else at this point. And we're like 30 minutes into the game, so it's not really a big deal. But getting past this battle did come with a price. I leveled Dun up to the cap for the next gym, and with the XP that we got from this battle, we now exceed it, meaning Dun, our only Pokemon, is invalid. Now you may think, okay, just don't level it to the cap, but look at how over level 20 we are. We need to be at least level 17 for Bugsy so we can learn rollouts, and that took me halfway through level 18. We're over leveling regardless. Seriously, why are the levels so close? Thankfully though, we do finally have an eligible encounter soonish, and it's another 1%er. Though we do have to fight 1 force trainer battle before we can get there, which will technically be breaking the rules since Dun is over leveled, but come on, what do you want from me? I promise being a level higher isn't giving me an overwhelming advantage over the level 10 Diglett. Just past Goldenrod on Route 35, there's another 1% chance encounter, which took me almost an hour IRL with speed up. Ditto's a 4% chance on this route, 4 times that of the Pokemon I'm looking for, and I found it 13 times before landing my encounter. I don't know how I had the time and patience back in the day to play this game like normal. And it's Yanma, a Pokemon that's 4 times weak to Miltank's signature rollouts. And while Yanmega's great, we won't get it until level 33, which with the terrible level curve is like the second half of this game. And Yanma sucks. A small note, Yanman is actually a Pokemon that can be found at 40% during a swarm, but I considered that to be a special encounter, so I don't count it. If I did count swarms, we'd lose like half of our encounters, Dun included. Alright, no worries. Still 1 more Pokemon we can get, and that's in the National Park. On Thursdays and Saturdays, they host a bug catching contest, which is the only time you can get 2 Pokemon, Scyther and Pinsir. More bug types weak to roll out, both being at a rate of 5%. Since they tie, I'll just catch whichever one I get first. And it ends up being Pinsir. Scyther would have been better in almost every way, especially as we can evolve it into Sizzle who can resist normal and is neutral to rock. But I'm not too upset. I rarely ever use Pinsir, and it even learns a fighting move before the next gym. Since I don't want to go back to the trouble of making it this far again, I should do some prep before Whitney. I head back to the Ilex Forest where I teach Pin Madam Headbutt. I also taught this move to Dun, and when he becomes eligible again, this is going to be the cheesiest move ever. And then I head to the game corner, which I allow in most of my runs, play some Voltorb Flip, and then buy the TMs for Swords Dance and substitute at the rewards counter. Both moves which I teach to Pin Madam. Hey, we need all the help we can get, and it's not like we're risking our Pokemon to play Voltorb Flip. Only our lives. And finally, while getting through the gym, Pin Madam levels up to level 18, learning the fighting move Revenge. A move which always goes last, but doubles in power if you're attacked that turn. With that, Whitney should be no problem. Pin Madam sets up a substitute on Clefairy, who even after 2 double slaps that hit for a total of 5 times. Can't break my sub. Set up 2 Swords Dances in the meantime, and with our sub up, a +4 Headbutt gets the one-shot. Next is Miltank. A Stomp finally breaks through, but even without the boost since our sub took damage, a super effective +4 Revenge gets the one-shot. And that's Whitney. I think Pin Madam was a better option for this gym, especially after what Whitney says. Apparently the Pokeathlon Dome only opens up after beating her, which means we would have had to stick with Scyther. I think my strat would have remained the same, but would have been all that much harder to pull off. Dun could have easily soloed if it hadn't overleveled, but with the level cap increased, he's back home. I was initially fooled thinking I could catch a Stantler with Intimidate or a Magma, but both Pokemon have higher odds on different routes, Magma being more common in the morning. But then I realized I can actually go past Ecruteak on the following routes before needing to fight Morty, and here we have the opportunity for 2 new encounters. Unfortunately, the 2 good encounters on Route 38 are blocked by Snubbull, who's a 1% chance. Not a bad Pokemon thanks to how we can evolve it into Granbull immediately, but probably not as strong as the other 2. It doesn't even get its good ability. And this hunt was even worse than Yanma, taking me almost twice as long. My favorite part was getting 2 Miltank in a row, a 1 in 400 chance before the 1% Snubble, who we can actually reroll for on the next route, which has almost the exact same encounter table, both Miltank and Tauros being a 5% chance, until I remember the new area past Cyanwood added in the remakes, where they can both be found at 20%. Why would they add such a thing? We still have one more encounter available to us in Mount Mortar, another 1% chance, but RNGesus has acknowledged my suffering, and we found Marill in under 10 minutes. We can evolve both of them immediately, and with that get our next gym badge. We do have another rival battle, but this time with a full team he's a joke, which will be a running theme. Morty's free with a normal type, and Gramble with Bite can make it go by much faster, but something I realized while fighting the trainers is just how slow he is. So, while he doesn't have Intimidate, we can make use of his inferior ability, Quick Feet, which raises speed if it has a status, by pre-poisoning him. This will also prevent us from being put to sleep. Brewdog can now outspeed to one-shot Ghastly with Bite. We can outspeed Haunter to one-shot with Bite. Gengar does move first, but wastes a turn using Mean Look, and Bite just misses the kill. It restores some HP with its berry. The only attack it has to hit us is Sucker Punch, coming off its weak attack, and we can restore our health with the berry. Bite finishes Gengar off. Even Haunter outspeeds and also wastes a turn using Mean Look. Bite once again gets the one-shot, getting us the 4th badge. See? Nice and free. Eradicate would have made quicker work of it. Honestly, pre-statusing your Pokemon even without an ability that benefits from it might be the way to go with this battle. If they can't hit you with ghost moves and can't put you to sleep, they're pretty much sitting ducks. Might want to still be wary of Mean Look plus Curse though. But our next battle against Chuck may not be as free, as we have 2 Pokemon weak to fighting and 2 weak to rock, which is coverage his first Pokemon has. Primeape also has Double Team, which in combination with Focus Punch, a fighting move with 150 BP that fails if he takes damage, could screw us over if we're unlucky. Primeape starts the battle using a Double Team, which is the last thing we wanted to see. Brewdog still hits the strength, doing over half. Now I could try for another, but if we miss, we're not surviving a super effective Focus Punch. Into Pin Madam, and he uses Rock Slide. Why? I swear this game cheats sometimes. We take it pretty well though, so we can stay in for a Brick Break as we miss. Our Berry lets us tank another Rock Slide as we survive on 5 HP, and we thankfully hit the next one. But next up is Poliwrath, and this time he has a chance to put our monster to sleep. I switch back into Brewdog as Poliwrath hits Surf, doing less than half. Alright, as long as he tries to use Focus Punches, we should be good, as Strength does over half, breaking his focus. We survive another hit from Surf, so staying in should be safe, as he uses a Body Slam for some reason. Our Berry lets us eat another Surf, so we stay in. On another Body Slam, one last Strength gets us the 5th badge. Brewdog's been pulling his weight. That went a lot better than I expected. I got pretty scared after seeing that first Double Team, but we take our wins. Now canonically, the next battle should be Jasmine, but she has higher levels than Price, so we'll fight him next. Before heading over there, we catch another Pokemon. By getting the good rod from Olivine, we can get the 3% Corsola, which I actually found first try. We could have gotten the Staryu, but guess who became more common after a certain new area got introduced? That one hurt, especially after making my video last year. But we don't even need any of these Pokemon. We have Pin Madam. We do have to go through the first of the 2 tedious Team Rocket sections, and it's not even worth narrating. Against Seal, we use the first turn to set up a Swords Dance while getting hit by Icy Wind, which also lowers our speed, potentially making this next part annoying. We still outspeed, and 1 X's later onto Piloswine. Piloswine does outspeed, but wastes a turn using Hail. Our +2 super effective Brick Break getting the one-shot. Dugong has no moves that will kill. One shot. That's Price. Don't think he's ever been of any concern during any of my playthroughs. And Jasmine isn't much better. We set up a Swords Dance as Magnemite uses Thunder Wave, which we were prepared for with our Lumberry. One shot with Brick Break. Steelix actually tanks the +2 super effective Brick Break really well, the berry allowing it to survive another. But Iron Tail doesn't do much, so we can just spam 2 more Brick Breaks. Another Magnemite, another one shot. Yeah, the gym leaders in this game kinda suck, but now we have the section I was dreading the most, even before I started this run. The Rocket Takeover. Because it's so goddamn boring. Before we head to Goldenrod, we get a call telling us that the new area past Cyanwood is open for visitors, and while he may have taken 2 encounters away from us, he did give 2 back. I also catch a Shelder on the way, another 3% fishing mon who I missed earlier. I've actually been having amazing luck with fishing. Both Corsola and Shelder are much more common with the Super Rod, but you can only get that in the post-game. The first of the 2 encounters is actually one I'm excited to see. Despite being completely locked away in the original games, until literally before you fight Red, Miss Dravers can be found in the cave system on the way to the Safari Zone. is a 5% encounter which can only be found at night, which makes it eligible for us to use. This didn't take too long, but I found 2% Steelixes back to back, a 1 in 2,500 chance, before finding my 1 in 20 Misdreavus. And the other Pokemon that we can get is Diglett. Okay, not as hype, but it's a unique type that we wouldn't have access to otherwise. They're a lot more common in Kanto, but that's the post-game, so I don't count those routes. And something that I forgot is we can evolve the Yanman now. At level 33, he learns Ancient Power, which is the only requirement it needs to evolve into Yanmega. So he'll be useful now, right? Well, sure, if he had any moves. Misdreavus, on the other hand, can evolve immediately with some help from the Pokeathlon if Dust Stones weren't locked until we get the National Dex. And it's not just the Pokeathlon, all Dust Stones are locked behind the post-game. Seriously, why do they pull shit like this? I mean, Yanmega's a Gen 4 Pokemon and it's available, so why not Mismagius? Right after they made Misdreavus accessible as well. I suppose it could be worse. Murkrow still isn't available until after the post-game. And Salt on the Wound, we have the worst section in the game coming up. We can still teach Mismagius Shadow Ball with our new level cap and Thunderbolt from the game corner. Honestly, making her somewhat decent, even as a first stage. We can at the very least get a Water Stone for Shelly, evolving her to Cloyster, who can immediately learn Surf and Ice Beam from the game corner. It's a physical attacker, but its special attack isn't much worse. And we're fighting level 24 Mons. Even Petrol's using level 30s, though he can be a bit concerning as he has 6 coughing, or with self-destruct. But with Mismagius immune to normal, resistant to poison, and packed with a super effective Psybeam, Petrol's easy. Rivals easy, rocket battles are easy, the next admin's easy. I'm just gonna narrate these last 2 battles so I have more content. Next up is Ariana, who has us all cornered without Lance to protect us. Pin Madam sets up a Swords Dance, Strength, X-Scissor, but everything's been leading up to this very moment. Finally, we have our fated battle against Archer. Who the fuck is Archer? Surf, Surf, and Surf. So I was under the impression that I would get a new Ice type encounter before the next gym, but it turns out Jinx is actually a 10% chance in the morning, so it's invalid. But we do get one more Pokemon I completely missed. Fishing with a good rod on the route right before Ice Path, there's a 3% chance for you to land a Remoraid, which I honestly forgot was even available before the post-game. Out of every mediocre Pokemon, Octillery is one of the best, and despite my opinions about this game, even I can admit that Claire is one of the hardest final gym battles. And with our lackluster pool of Pokemon, we have very few answers for her. Now, there was actually a reason why I picked Soul Silver over Heart Gold. We have one more encounter before needing to fight Claire. Not that this encounter really turns the tides or anything, but it's something. That being the version exclusive Skarmory, a 5% chance on the route right below Blackthorn City. It's a steel type that resists Dragon, but Dragon type moves are the least of our concerns. Claire leads with the not dragon type Gyarados, and I sent out Mismagius. Despite us having a higher base speed and being a higher level, Gyarados still outspeeds to hit us with a super effective bite, which we survive. Mismagius does not get flinched and hits back with a 4 times effective Thunderbolt, which still doesn't get the kill. Gyarados survives on what looks like just 1 HP. I'm confident Claire's gonna heal, so we land another, which does even less damage. Well, we're dying to another bite, so into Cutlery, who resists all of Gyarados' attacks. Gyarados still outspeeds, hitting Dragon Rage, which always does 40 points of damage. We fly up in the air, and it turns out that we speed tie, us outspeeding to hit Fly, finishing Gyarados off. Next is the first of the 2 Dragonair, the only thing setting them apart being that one knows Aqua Tail and the other Fire Blast. We can safely assume that this one knows Fire Blast. Into Azumazu. We get paralyzed, but Azu can win the one-on-one with the strength into a double edge. Our Berry still keeping us pretty healthy. On to the next Dragonair. I want to keep Azu healthy a bit longer, so into Cutlery on a weak Dragon Pulse, triggering our Berry. We outspeed to Roost Up, healing our health, but getting paralyzed. Into Shelly on the next Dragon Pulse, and it does almost half. That was a bit of a misplay as I was expecting Aqua Tail. Dragonair sets up another paralysis, and a single Ice Beam gets the one-shot. But none of these were the Pokemon I was worried about. Finally, we have Kingdra, a Pokemon that in this generation is only weak to Dragon moves, and good luck finding Pokemon that know Dragon moves in this game. Now I know a Dragon Pulse is coming, so I switch into Cutlery, as it crits, leaving it on just 3 HP. I mean, to be fair, if it did that much, Cutlery wouldn't really have been too much help. But what am I even supposed to do now? It could probably 2-shot all of my Pokemon, and I'm not even sure if the Pokemon in my box could have handled it. Unfortunately, to play this as safely as possible, I decide I need a safe switch, bringing out Azu on the Hydro Pump. Well, it eats it pretty well, but I'm sorry, Azumazu. I need you to die. It's time to pull out our secret weapon. Dun dun dun. So the Dun has a secret OP strat that I haven't really talked about yet, mostly because it was unneeded up until now. This Dunsparce that we caught has the ability Serene Grace, which doubles the chance of secondary effects from moves. For example, Body Slam has the 30% chance to paralyze your opponent, so Dun will have a 60% chance. In this case, we can paralyze Kingdra with Glare to outspeed, and then stun lock it with Headbutt, essentially only giving it a 30% chance to move. Now I was doing this with the expectation that Dun would die and I would clean up afterwards, but I got sentimental. I ended up switching out to Shelly on a Hydro Pump. She survives, but sadly, like Azu, she has a mission. Goodbye, Shelly. Unless Hydro Pump misses. Ice Beam brings Kingdra low. Can we dodge one more? No, of course not. Thank you, Shelly. But now we can bring out Pin Madam, who with the paralysis can outspeed, finishing Kingdra off with the next scissor, getting us the final badge. Claire was someone I was expecting to lose Pokemon on, though losing 2 of my water types was rough. That being said, getting a free switch to guarantee a win is far better than playing through this game all over again. With our final badge, and after spending an embarrassing amount of time blindly fumbling my way through a cave to catch a Pokemon I can't even use, we're ready for the league. Oh yeah, one last rival fight. He's easy enough, but this time I let Dun try out his new combo. Poor Golbat doesn't even get a chance to move. Poor Feraligatr doesn't even get a chance to move. Pin Madam breaks Magneton in half. Our new team member Tank one-shots Haunter with Surf. And Kadabra uses a Reflect against a special attacker. Miss Magus gets the one-shot with Shadow Ball. One last encounter in Victory Road, that being the 5% Rhyhorn. And you wanna guess what? We can't even fully evolve Rybread until the post-game. And this time we need the HM Rock Climb, which we can't even get until we have every badge in Kanto. Why must they play with my emotions like this? First up in the Elite Four is Will, the Psychic type member. Before fighting him, I also made sure to trade my Pokemon right up to the cap, so they can level up after gaining some XP. This also gave me some much needed speed EVs. Knowing Zatu's going for a Confuse Ray, we set up a substitute, use Swords Dance as it breaks it with Psychic, X-Scissor, 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 and X-Scissor. Alright, onto a familiar face. Koga's next. Tank outspeeds to one-shot Ariados with Flamethrower, but somehow can't outspeed the Fortress, who sets up a layer of Toxic Spikes before melting to Tank's Flamethrower. This will make the rest of the battle a lot more annoying, but Koga's not too bad in general. Muck's next, and after one unlucky turn with it using Minimize, it just starts snowballing from there. Thankfully, I had insurance for this as I can send out Miss Magus, who knows Perish Song, putting it on the timer. And then just stall turns with Cutlery, who Muck can't touch. Then Koga switches out on its final turn. Cutlery could have handled Venomoth if it didn't get confused by Supersonic turn 1, and then hit itself twice. I was under the impression he had Giga Drain, but I was wrong, so Rybread can one-shot with Stone Edge. Back to Muck, and with Rybread already out, one-shot with Earthquake. And finally it's Crobat, who has no way of harming Cutlery, but has double team spam. So I just Perish Song it first. With no Pokemon to switch out to, 3 turns later, we're past the second Elite Four member. Now, under any other circumstance, Bruno is an absolute joke, but unfortunately we don't have any real counters for fighting types, so we need to actually think a little this time around. Now Hitmontop at least has no way of touching Miss Magus, who's immune to all of its attacks, so while it does use Dig, stalling the inevitable, we can just spam Psybeam until it goes down. I get so many pointless crits, I don't need to use up my luck this early. Hitmonlee has the move High Jump Kick, which does damage if the user misses, meaning we can bait it into using it against Miss Magus until the recall finishes it off. Hitmonchan has no fighting move, so it's Dun-Dun's time to shine. We stunlock Hitmonchan, roosting off any damage we take until it's low. Bruno's already uses 4 restores on Hitmontop, so now I decide to switch out to Pin Madam to finish the job as we want to bait Onix out next. Into Tank as Onix sets up a Sandstorm. It outspeeds hitting an Earthquake, which of course crits. Onix is just bad, so it still doesn't get a kill, and we can one-shot with a 4 times effective Surf. And finally it's Machamp, who I'm terrified of. I don't want to take any chances, so I switch right into Miss Magus, who's unaffected by fighting moves, and then immediately set up a Perish Song while eating a Rock Slide. Now I can just switch between Rybread, who tanks a Rock Slide, and Miss Magus on Dynamic Punch until Machamp goes down, getting us past Bruno. And that's 2 Johto runs in a row where Bruno's been more than just 2 sentences now. But we get another free one as next up is Karen. We use our tried and tested substitute into Swords Dance, but Umbreon can be a bit annoying as it spams double team. Pin Madam has yet to let us down, hitting the first X-Scissor, getting the one-shot. We outspeed Murkrow, getting another one-shot, and now Houndoom's out while we still have our sub up. It doesn't even matter as somehow we still outspeed, getting another one-shot. Next is Gengar, and this Gengar is pitiful. Its only ghost move is Lick. a base 30 power physical move on a special attacker that's weaker than Tackle. This is the final Elite 4 member. We somehow even outspeed Gengar, a 4 times weak X-Scissor still doing a third. It also has Focus Miss, which is not very effective but still breaks the sub. This is actually perfect, as one move I was concerned about was Destiny Bond, which takes the opponent down if the user feints the turn after it's used. But with us outspeeding, we can keep this under control. I do try to set up another substitute as Gengar hits another Focus Miss. Only the AI, huh? This time it doesn't break. And then X is a crit. Unneeded, but I'll take this one. And finally it's Vileplume. X-Scissor. And that's the entire Elite 4. I think I got through it in under 20 minutes. But unfortunately, like Bruno, while Lance is one of the easiest champions, that's only if you have the right counters for his team, which we don't. Making this possibly one of the hardest Lance battles I'll have. Lance leads with a not dragon type Gyarados, and I send up Miss Mag S. Despite us having a higher base speed and being a higher level, Gyarados still outspeeds to hit us with a waterfall, which we survive. Miss Mag S doesn't get flinched and hits back with a 4 times effective Thunderbolt, which actually picks up the kill this time. Gyarados goes down. Maybe it was a range. This brings Aerodactyl out, who knows Crunch, so into Cutlery on the Rock Slide. While Cutlery could handle this, I wanted healthy, so into Ride Bread on the ineffective Thunderfang. We take a Crunch and then hit our first Stone Edge, getting the one-shot. But now is the first of Lance's 3 illegal Dragonites, this one likely being the one with Blizzard. Dragonite would have been easy if I had a fast water type, but now it's going to be a bit of a problem. I know Blizzard's coming, so we get a safe switch into Tank, who doesn't get frozen, and we should be able to take a Dragon Rush. We don't. That wasn't even a crit. I don't know why I thought Tank was bulkier, but with our only Ice Beam user down, we have a bit of a problem. But what is a pseudo-legendary to a god? Pin Madam doesn't take too kindly to her subjects being killed. She could outspeed the likes of Houndoom, she could outspeed the likes of Dragonite. We set up a substitute on the Thunder Wave, and she does what she does best. Swords Dance up as Dragonite uses Thunder Wave again. We set up all 3 of our Swords Dances as Dragonite continues to use Thunder Wave. Lance, you good, buddy? Unfortunately, the only move Pin Madam could learn that wasn't resisted by flying types was Strength, which even at +6 doesn't get the kill, as Dragonite uses another Thunder Wave. Lance, what are you doing? Guess he has favorites. But with us outspeeding, we can just let Lance burn all of his 4 restores. But turns out even Strength was a roll. We still have the sub up, so we can stay in on Charizard, as Pin Madam still outspeeds. A +6 Strength gets the one-shot. We're already on the Ace Dragonite, and while Strength doesn't kill, the berry brings him out of heal range, and the sub eats the Fire Blast. Pin Madam's Strength picks up the kill on Lance's Ace, and we're on the final Dragonite. But in my excitement, I threw forgetting to set up another substitute. Strength just misses the kill, and we get paralyzed. Lance heals up, but we can't afford to switch out now. But Pin Madam's Bloodlust knows no bounds. She breaks through paralysis, landing another Strength, which lands the high roll, ending Dragonite and the Nuzlocke. If this was any other challenge, I'm not shy when it comes to sharing my opinion about not liking the Kanto postgame, with it just being an easy boss rush with no real substance. But with how many of my mons survived, and the pure disdain in Pin Madam's eyes at still not being the strongest, I think it's about time I finally set sail to Kanto in a Johto game. Well, my opinion about this portion being an easy boss rush has not changed, but there are still 2 fights I consider to be pretty difficult. Not as hard as I see people online suggesting, but enough for them to be worth playing up until. We can finally evolve Miss Mag S into Miss Magius, and even catch another Pokemon I'd forgotten about. Fishing in the route under Violet City, we have the 2% chance to land Quillfish. Another water type to replace our 3rd fallen one. The levels aren't as pathetic as the original games, but Surge is still an easy sweep with any ground type that knows Earthquake. Sabrina dies to a single unboosted X-Scissor, even wasting the 1 turn she gets with Alakazam using a Reflect. And after a single Swords Dance, Pin Madam can outspeed and one-shot all of Erica's Pokemon. Janine would have been an easy sweep had I not forgotten to give Miss Magius a Lumberry, getting some unlucky confused turns. But her Pokemon can't really do anything, so after Miss Magius finally snaps out of it, the Psychic Spam begins. Based. Misty's a bit more difficult as we don't really have any Pokemon that can use stab super effective moves on a Pokemon, so they can survive a hit. But Golduck wastes a turn using Disable, and Starmie's weak to a Shadow Ball anyway. Pin Madam sees red, and poor Quag is really a sitting duck against any bulky Pokemon that isn't weak to its moves. I didn't really have a good answer to Brock either. 3 of his Pokemon are 4 times weak to Mr. Puff's Waterfall, but the remaining 2 are dual water types, who are neutral. A couple of revenges from Mr. Puff could have taken Kabutops, but it used Endure, proccing a heal, and then Mr. Puff became too weak to take any more attacks. Miss Magess could sweep with a Thunderbolt, however. And Blaine's allergic to water, though Mr. Puff gets burned by Magmar's ability, so Rybread comes in to finish the job. And this finally brings us to Blue, the first of the 2 battles I actually consider tough, mainly because he's the first one that actually uses a diverse team. And in my opinion, I actually think he's tougher than Red. First up's Executor, who could set up a Trick Room if Pin Madam didn't smell a fresh kill. Arcanine's next on the field, but we can bring out Rybread on his Flare Blitz, eat a Dragon Pulse, and then hit back with a super effective Earthquake, picking up another one-shot. Gyarados gets baited out, and while he has given some trouble in the past, this time his levels are far below our own. Into Mr. Puff on the not very effective Waterfall, then into Miss Magess on the ineffective Return, who then finally outspeeds, electrocuting Gyarados with Thunderbolt. Blue brings out his own Rybread, and I switch straight into Cutlery on the Stone Edge. Now since Rhydon will never use Earthquake, we can just keep roosting up, losing our Flying type, eating all of its Stone Edges. Once it runs out, it can barely do anything to us. It does have a super effective Thunderfang, but it's a weak move being used against a Pokemon with high defenses that doesn't even get Stab. But Rhydon opts to use a 4 times weak Mega Horn instead. I mean, sure. It eats our Steel Wings pretty well, but with Roost, we were always winning the one-on-one. Unfortunately, Blue heals up, making this last way longer than necessary. But up next is Machamp. This time one I am genuinely terrified of. It has a really diverse move pool with strong moves, and has no guard, which ensures all his attacks land. We can't even rely on Perish Song, as Miss Magnus would have to eat an attack, which it may not even survive, and Blue would still switch out. So for the first time in the Johto game, I use a forbidden tactic. I PP stall. Fortunately, the 2 moves we want to PP stall, Stone Edge and Dynamic Punch, only have 5 PP each. And we can switch between Miss Magess and Rybread to eat attacks until Stone Edge crits, leaving Rybread low. Rybread will die to another hit, and we still haven't finished our PP stall. Both Mr. Puff and Cutlery would bait Thunder Punch, so the only other Pokemon up to the task is Dunderdun, who does not take it all that well. But with only 1 Stone Edge left, I decide on a different plan, one that we're more familiar with. Into Mr. Puff on the final Stone Edge, and then into Johto's Sleep Paralysis Demon, Pin Madam on the Thunder Punch. Dynamic Punch, despite not being super effective, is still stronger, so I set up a substitute to avoid being confused. But the sub still remains, and that was his strongest move against Pin Madam, so we can freely Swords Dance up, refreshing our sub on the not very effective Earthquake. Thunder Punch would have been stronger here. Maybe electric moves are just bugged. With us getting low, a +4 strength gets the one-shot. And finally it's Blue's ace, Pidgeot. Why a Route 1 bird? We still outspeed, but a +4 strength doesn't get the kill. However, all Pidgeot can do is break our sub. Another strength gets us past the final gym in the game. No, this is a misrepresentation of Johto. Blue's team isn't necessarily stronger than Red's, but is more diverse in what they can handle. And also, you can't as freely sack Pokemon here, though I have no explanation for Pidgeot. However, with finally getting the pass to enter Mount Silver, we can scale the mountain to reach the strongest trainer in Kanto. Now you can catch a 5% Larvitar here, but at this point, we have all the Pokemon that we need. We don't need a pseudo-legendary when we have a team full of real ones. And Corsola. Time to finally put this game behind us. Red leads with Pikachu, and I send out Rybread. Finally a Rhyperior. Pikachu holds a Light Ball, doubling his offensive stats, but Rybread still eats the Iron Tail, restoring some HP with his berry. There was no way for this poor rodent to survive a natural disaster. And throughout this battle, we have constant hail, taking chip damage every turn. But that's not all. Red takes advantage of the secondary effect Hail has. Blizzard is now always accurate. I switch into Coralita to eat. Lapras also has the move Brine, which does double the damage if your Pokemon is below half health. So with help from a berry, Coralita uses Recover to keep herself healthy. Another Brine, and we use a super effective Power Gem, which does only a third. I wanted you to be useful, Coralita. Well, she's still above half HP, even after taking hail damage, so we can stay in for another, bringing Lapras low. We can't survive another attack, but Lapras should be baited into using Brine, as it'll do double damage now. Into our favorite Bug, who takes it well, and then outspeeds to finish Lapras off with Brick Break. And this brings out Charizard, who can just switch into Rybread as Flare Blitz crits. And with hail damage, now I'm not even sure if he can survive a Dragon Pulse. He cannot. Goodbye, Rybread. This puts us in a weird spot, as the only other Pokemon that has an advantage over Charizard, Coralita, is very low. So there's only one snake for the job. Out comes our starter, dun dun dun. We're forced to take a Flare Blitz, doing almost half, and glare at Charizard. The hail triggers our berry. Now we need Charizard to lose just one turn, a 70% chance. We hit Headbutt, and Charizard breaks through the flinch and paralysis to nuke Dun 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 with Blast Burn. I'm so sorry, Dun Dun Dun. We could have at least survived a Flare Blitz. At the very least, Charizard can't move the next turn, so Red can't heal. I bring out Miss Magus to finish the job with Thunderbolt. This must have been karma for talking Charizard all these years. Next up, Snorlax, who has a super effective crunch, so into Cutlery. Now, despite having a weak special attack, even Snorlax takes advantage of an always accurate Blizzard. Cutlery not taking it well at all. I do get off a Toxic, meaning all we have to do is stall turns, which is easy with Roost, which also removes our flying typing, making Blizzard weaker. All of Snorlax's other moves are also weak to Steel. With help from Hail and a Fly to prevent Snorlax from getting to heal range, Snorlax will finally go down, but not before hitting another Blizzard, bringing Cutlery all the way into red. Snorlax is down, but now Cutlery's too weak to handle a Pokemon it should have with ease. But Blastoise is out first, also armed with a Blizzard. And like I said before, we can now start freely sacking Pokemon. So sorry, Coralita. It's been brief, but you did help with Lapras. She does survive the Blizzard, but succumbs to Hail. Goodbye, Coralita. Thunderbolt from Miss Magus misses the kill, but Blastoise throws using a weak Blizzard. I was terrified of taking a Hydro Cannon for a moment. Red heals, but we outspeed and two-shot. That paralysis did not matter whatsoever. And finally, it's my favorite Kanto starter, Venusaur. And he would have been completely walled by Cutlery if not for how low her health already is. But we still have a chance. I switch into Pin Madam expecting a grass move. I wasn't wrong, but it was Sleep Powder, which misses. I try for a classic maneuver, but Red's a champion, one I've played as myself. He understands the power of cheese by negating my sub with Sludge Bomb. Now unfortunately, Pin Madam's a bit too low to reliably set up, especially with Hail, so we need Cutlery to make this work. She comes in on an ineffective Sludge Bomb. I'm really glad I didn't stay in. We outspeed to Roost up, but Venusaur, despite seeing the kill, knew better and put us to sleep. Okay, that's fine, we should wall rise. Venusaur lets out a 4 times weak Frenzy Plant, bringing us far too low. With Hail, we're back to where we started. So this is a dead end. But now we do have a free turn, one that'll guarantee us the win, but at the cost of another long-term beloved member of my team. Miss Magus comes out. I'm not sure how much she's appeared in the video, but she was easily the Pokemon I used the most against random trainers thanks to her coverage, and she swept half of the Kanto Gym leaders, so sacking her was my last choice. But now I need her to hit a super effective sidekick, just missing the kill, putting Venusaur into heal range. It was so close. Venusaur does use a Giga Drain, bringing Miss Magus low, also bringing it out of heal range, but Hail puts him back in. And even Miss Magus takes some damage. Well, it's time. Red heals up, and we hit one last super effective sidekick, doing over half. But Miss Magus takes damage from Hail, leaving her alive on just 4 HP. She can use her real last sidekick, ending Venusaur, and the Nuzlocke. Look, I would have known she'd survive if I had just looked at the numbers, but I was so set on sacking her to let Pin Madam finish up that her surviving the Hail chip was genuinely such a hype moment for me. All in all, were the rare Pokemon worth the effort finding? No, absolutely not. Most of them were actually worse than just the regular Pokemon you can find on that route, and the type coverage you get is pretty bad. But I will say, this is possibly the most unique team I've ever used in the Johto playthrough, even using Pokemon I rarely ever do in other runs. Pinsir and Miss Magius definitely being some very pleasant surprises. I'm really glad I found Pinsir instead of Scyther in the National Park. Love Sizzle, don't get me wrong, but certainly not a rare pick. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I think this is actually a really interesting challenge to try out in other games, especially ones with more expanded dexes. So please look forward to more videos in the future.